Let's move on to the second classic story that you're going to be profiling as part of Monsters and Ghosts. It is Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. It was first published December of 1843. It sold out by Christmas Eve just a few days later. So people really loved this one right from the start, didn't they?
Absolutely. And it is, and in a way, it's his comeback in that Dickens has had this enormous success early in his career, and it's become, the best known writer in England at the time, and makes the most money. And then he has and he takes a little break, and he goes to America and has a little trip, and then he comes back, and then he starts another book. And first of all, the Americans are angry with him because then he writes about America in not so flattering terms. And then the next book he writes is Martin Chuzzlewit, and it's not that, like, people don't love it as much as his other books. And he's on a little bit of a downturn. And then he writes Christmas Carol, and it's like everybody loves it. And there's stage productions immediately, and it goes on to, continue to do well for him. But he's also writing a ghost story for Christmas, the subtitle of it, and A Ghost Story of Christmas is the subtitle. And the Brits love ghost stories at Christmas. In America, and especially growing up, you think like, oh, Christmas and, sugar plum fairies and Santa Claus, and that's what it's about. But the Brits are like, no, you tell horror stories on Christmas Eve. And there's a great tradition of that there that Christmas Carol is tied up in. It existed before then, but I think Christmas Carol solidifies the fact that ghost stories belong at Christmas. And this is the way he wants to tell a story that he thinks has great kind of social ramifications, because he's telling a story about how the downtrodden in our society need to be taken care of, and it's everyone's job to do that. You don't rely on government for that. You don't rely, you have to take care. We all have to take care of each other, and Christmas is a great time to learn that. And to get that message across, he decides, I'm going to tell a story about a man who is haunted by his past and haunted by his future. And that's a really interesting twist for a ghost story, that you're not only going to be haunted by your past, but you're going to be haunted by your future too. And there's humor in it, and there's a kind of lot of heartfelt drama, but Christmas Carol can also be scary. And I know this because my children refuse to let me read it to them. Like, from the little that they knew of it, they like, as soon as Marley comes in, they're like, no. Like, they want no parts of it whatsoever. And they wouldn't let me read A Christmas Carol to them. And that crushed me. I was like, what? I've read The Hobbit to you. What do you mean you won't let me read Christmas Carol to you? No, they thought that was too scary. And I guess it was. I mean, I'm not believe them that it was. And there are scenes in it that are scary, but it's also, I think, as me coming to the book too, that the themes in it are it can be difficult. When the Ghost of Christmas Present, for those who haven't read it yet, when you do read it, when the Ghost of Christmas Present reveals ignorance and want, it's creepy. And it really has an effect on you. And then, of course, the Ghost of Christmas Future, like death coming and in his robes. It's, so there's enough scary elements in it that make it qualify for this. But the most interesting thing about it for me as a ghost story lover, is this way that Dickens writes ghosts for it and does this, supernatural turn that, I mean, you can't argue with it that it is still, it is the most popular thing that he's ever written it is in the top 5 most popular things ever written in the 19th century. Maybe it's even number 1. It's that and Pride and Prejudice and Frankenstein and maybe Jekyll and Hyde for its kind of cultural resonance. I have a Google alert for Jekyll and Hyde, and every day things come up, and half the things have nothing to do with the story. They're about, like, and this criminal is a Jekyll and Hyde character. You'd be surprised how many sports stories come up about Jekyll and Hyde. I'm like, what? The team is not a Jekyll and Hyde. But that term itself, because it's so used so much, that it has that much resonance still. The idea of it has that much resonance. Christmas Carol is up there with them as well, that everybody knows Scrooge. He's the one character in Dickens that everybody knows what a Scrooge is. A miser and a really mean guy. But no, he's actually a really good guy because he reforms. But that we'll talk about at the end. So nobody talks about Scrooge as a good guy, but he really was.
Ed, in addition to the telling of horror stories and ghost stories at Christmas time, what were some of the other British customs at the time in the 1840s when this came out?
Dickens gets that invented Christmas kind of moniker on him, and it's not true, but he is enormously important in the idea that Christmas is a domestic, secular holiday. Now, Dickens wouldn't have said it's a secular holiday. It's, of course, about the birth of Jesus, and this is the whole idea. But, well, you didn't write a book about that. That became the most popular book you ever wrote. You wrote a book about how it's all about family and how we all take care of each other and think of each other, and centered around the hearth and home. That's what you really wrote about. And that's kind of what becomes then one of the most important things about Christmas, that Christmas isn't just a holiday for people who want to celebrate the birth of Christ. Christmas is a holiday for how we all get together and be close to each other and love one another and take care of one another. And Christmas Carol has a big influence on that. The ways people celebrated Christmas were, some people didn't celebrate Christmas, and especially if you're in, we're talking the 19th century where there were no laws about how much you could make somebody work. And if you have some kind of job, you might be working on Christmas anyway, because you had to work 6 days a week anyway. You're lucky to just have Sunday off. So it wasn't that kind of day where everything stops and everything is focused around it. But at the time, this starts early 19th century, but it's really generating a lot in the 1830s and 1840s, and that is the commercial, kind of mercantile world around Christmas. People talk now about Christmas creep, like, oh, it's September and they're already putting Christmas stuff out. Let me tell you, there is evidence. I have come across 19th century articles about people complaining about stores putting out these end of the year Christmas and New Year's books in September. Like, come on, really? Like, why don't you wait for that? Absolutely. In the 1840s, people were saying this. It's always been the case, because the commercial appeal of being able to sell something around an idea is very important to markets, to markets, and that's Christmas's. It's really tied to the market. Halloween is tied to the market now. Halloween didn't used to be tied to the market. Now it's very tied to the market. The spirit stores were up in August for Halloween, and I'm fine with that. Halloween and Christmas, I'm never a person that says, it's too early. It's never too early. I will celebrate Halloween and Christmas all year long. They're my 2 favorite holidays. I can't get enough of them. I'll sing Christmas carols in March. I'm totally fine with that. I will celebrate Halloween at any time of the year before Halloween, I'm totally fine with it. So I don't have any issues with it, but that's also tied in with it. And so it's the ways people celebrate Christmas. I think we do it. I think we also have to acknowledge the realities of it and how it operates in our lives, and that it did operate in people's lives in Dickens' time. And it was really, really starting to become this as a time where it's not just a religious holiday. It's some kind of celebration that we're all aware of and we buy things for. But Dickens's contributions to it are kind of beyond that and more important than that, which is really nice about it. But people didn't have the same kind of traditions we have now. I mean, the whole Santa Claus, Saint Nick, whatever, visiting you is sporadic in Europe and America, and sometimes it's kind of creepy and not great, and sometimes it's nice, and that's something that slowly builds through the 19th century into the 20th. Dickens and his kids and other people's kids certainly weren't waiting for Santa Claus to visit them. That's later for them. But in America, some people are thinking that. Christmas trees are kind of become very popular in England, at least in the English-speaking world, because of the German traditions that Prince Albert brings in his marriage to Queen Victoria. And there's a famous picture of them in a magazine with a Christmas tree, saying like, King and Queen have a Christmas tree. We want a Christmas tree. So that happens then. Everybody's not rushing off to church on Christmas morning. Even in a heavily Christian society in Europe and America, then that kind of comes actually a little later. So it's a mixed bag. But gifts are becoming important. And for Dickens's time, I guess maybe the key difference is Christmas isn't considered a day as much as Christmas is a season. Christmas is Christmas Day through New Year's. You were just as likely to get a New Year's gift as you were to get a Christmas gift. And maybe you would only get one, maybe you would get both. But it's that there's a week there that it's really 12 days that you would be celebrating the end of the year. I see. And the beginning of a new one. And Christmas gets tied in. Christmas is more tied in with New Year's then than I think it is now.
A Christmas Carol and also The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde will be profiled as part of Monsters and Ghosts. It'll begin online on Monday, September 23rd. Ed, how can people register for these programs?
You can go to the Rosenbach website, rosenbach.org, or search online, rosenbach.org, Monsters and Ghosts. I'm sure we'll have a link on the webpage for the podcast, and register for it. And when you register, I send you an email every week with links and a little information about what's coming up the next week, the cocktail recipe that we have coming up for the next week. So you can also, make that cocktail yourself and drink along with me, because I just want to smoke and drink and talk about books.
You'll have the pipe with you, right?
Always.
Ed, as always, it's been a lot of fun. Our guest, Edward G. Pettit, the Sunstein Senior Manager of Public Programs at the Rosenbach Museum and Library, previewing his next Biblioventure starting September 23rd. Great stuff as always, Ed. Thank you. Appreciate it much.
Thank you for having me on again. Number 3. Now I got to go for 4, and I'm going to tell Josh I'm going to be 4 one day. So
yeah, once we get up to 6 or 7, we'll create an album and start selling it.
There we go. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much, Ed.